They called him the Devil of the Dakotas. Bo Sterling didn't have a heart. He had a vault where he kept his money and his secrets. When he walked into that saloon and saw Clara O'Malley, he didn't see a woman to love. He saw a loophole. He needed a wife to save his empire, and she needed a miracle to save her life. He offered her $5,000 and a wedding ring on one strict condition. We share a name, but never a bed. It was the perfect business deal. Until the lights went out, the whiskey poured, and the danger outside forced them close. This is the true, gritty story of how a fake marriage turned into a bloodbath, and why breaking the rules was the only way to survive. The year was 1887, and the town of Purgatory Creek, Wyoming, smelled of three things: stale beer, horse manure, and desperation. Clara O'Malley knew the scent of desperation better than anyone. At 23, she had hands rougher than sandpaper and a debt hanging over her head that was heavy enough to snap her neck. Her father, a well-meaning but foolish gambler named Patrick, had died 3 months ago, leaving her nothing but a leaking roof and a handwritten IOU to the town's nastiest loan shark, a man named Silas Vane. It was a Tuesday night when Vane came to collect. Clara was scrubbing tables at the Gilded Spur, the grease clinging to her apron. "Time's up, Clara," Vane sneered, slamming a dirty hand onto the wet wood of the table. He was a large man, smelling of onions and rot. "Your daddy's ghost ain't paying these bills. You got the $100, or are you going to work it off in other ways?" Clara gripped the rag until her knuckles turned white. "I told you, Vane, I need another week. The mine shift pays out on Friday." "I'm done waiting," Vane growled, reaching for her wrist. The saloon went quiet, not because of Vane, but because the bat-wing doors swung open, letting in a gust of cold prairie wind. A shadow fell across the floorboards. Bo Sterling stepped inside. Everyone in the territory knew the name. The Sterlings owned half the county, and Bo ran the Sterling Ridge Ranch with an iron fist. He was 30 years old, 6'2", of lean muscle and bad attitude. He wore a charcoal duster coat, a black Stetson pulled low, and a Colt Peacemaker on his hip that looked like it had seen plenty of use. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked straight at the scene unfolding at the table. "Get your hands off her," Bo said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the room like a crack of thunder. Vane hesitated, then sneered. "This is private business, Sterling. The girl owes me." Bo walked over, his spurs jingling with a menacing rhythm. He reached into his vest, pulled out a gold coin, and flipped it onto the table. It spun and rattled before settling. "That's a $20 gold piece. That covers her father's debt, plus interest. Now get out." Vane looked at the coin, then at the gun on Bo's hip. He snatched the money and scrambled out the back door without a word. Clara didn't swoon. She wasn't the swooning type. She glared at her savior. "I didn't ask for your charity, Mr. Sterling. Now I just owe you instead of him." Bo looked her up and down, his eyes cold and calculating. They were the color of gunmetal. "You don't owe me money, Miss O'Malley, but you are going to pay me back." "And how's that?" she snapped, wiping her hands on her apron. "By packing your bags," he said flatly. "My carriage is outside. We're going to the justice of the peace. You're going to be my wife." Clara laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You've been drinking too much of the bad stuff, cowboy. I'm not a whore you can buy." Bo stepped closer, lowering his voice so the eavesdroppers couldn't hear. "I don't want a whore, Clara, and I sure as hell don't want a lover. I need a legal signature. My uncle, Judge Thaddeus Sterling, has found a clause in my father's will. If I'm not married by my 31st birthday, which is in 3 days, the ranch, the land, and the water rights revert to the state, which means they revert to him. Clara stared at him. So you just picked the first girl you save? I picked you because you have no family. You're stubborn and you're desperate, Beau said, his brutality refreshing in its honesty. Here is the deal. You marry me. You live at the Ridge for 1 year. You act the part in public. In private, you stay out of my way. In return, I give you $5,000 and a train ticket to anywhere in the world when the year is up. $5,000. It was a fortune. It was freedom. And the catch? Clara asked, narrowing her eyes. Rich men don't give away fortunes without a catch. Beau's face hardened. A muscle in his jaw ticked. The catch is the condition. This is a business arrangement. Nothing more. You do not enter my bedroom. You do not ask about my past. And under no circumstances do we consummate this marriage. If you try to seduce me, or if you fall in love with me, the deal is void, and you leave with nothing. Do you understand? Clara looked at his handsome, stony face. He was attractive, in a dangerous way, but he looked at her like she was a piece of livestock he was purchasing at an auction. I understand, Clara said, untying her apron and throwing it on the table. I'd sooner kiss a rattlesnake than you, Mr. Sterling. Let's go get married. The wedding took 10 minutes. The justice of the peace, a nervous man named Abernathy, shook as he signed the certificate. He knew Thaddeus Sterling, and he knew marrying Beau off was an act of war against the judge. You may kiss the bride, Abernathy stammered. Beau looked down at Clara. Up close, she smelled of lavender soap and rain. For a split second, his eyes softened. But then the steel shutter came back down. He leaned in, placing a chaste, dry kiss on her forehead. Let's go, he grunted. The ride to Sterling Ridge took 2 hours in the carriage. The landscape of Wyoming was vast and unforgiving, painted in shades of bruised purple and burnt orange as the sun set. When the ranch came into view, Clara gasped. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. A sprawling 2-story mansion made of dark timber and stone, sitting against the backdrop of the jagged mountains. But despite its grandeur, it felt cold. There were no flowers in the garden, only thorny brush. As the carriage pulled up, an older woman stood on the porch. This was Martha, the housekeeper. She had a face like a dried apple and eyes that saw everything. Mr. Beau, she nodded, and this must be the new Mrs. Sterling. Clara, she corrected, stepping down. Make up the guest room in the east wing for her, Beau ordered, handing the reins to a stable boy. Martha raised an eyebrow. The east wing? But sir, the master suite. The east wing, Martha, Beau barked. He turned to Clara. Dinner is at 7. Don't be late, and don't wander the grounds at night. We have wolves. He stormed off toward the stables, leaving Clara standing in the dust with her small, battered suitcase. He's a charmer, ain't he? Clara muttered. Martha didn't smile. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. He's a man haunted, child. You'd do best to take that money and run when the year is up. The last woman who thought she could tame Beau Sterling well, the ground in the family plot is still fresh. Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. His first wife? Fiancée, Martha corrected. A beauty. Died in a riding accident, or so the report said. Just be careful, Mrs. Sterling. The judge will be coming for dinner tomorrow night to inspect the happy couple. If he smells a lie, He'll burn this place to the ground." The next 24 hours were a blur of tension. Clara unpacked her meager belongings in the East Wing. The room was luxurious, with a 4-poster bed and velvet curtains, but the door had a heavy iron lock on it, on the inside. That first night, Clara couldn't sleep. The house groaned in the wind. Around midnight, she heard footsteps pacing in the hallway, heavy, restless boots. She crept to the door and listened. "Why did you bring her here?" a voice muttered. It was Beau. He was talking to himself. "You've just put a target on her back." The next evening, the real test began. A black carriage arrived, drawn by 4 white horses. Judge Thaddeus Sterling stepped out. He was an older version of Beau, but twisted. Where Beau was hard muscle, Thaddeus was soft dough and sharp suits. He carried a cane with a silver skull handle. Dinner was a battlefield. They sat at a long mahogany table, the silence punctuated only by the scraping of silverware. "So," Thaddeus said, slicing his steak with surgical precision. He didn't look at the meat. He stared right at Clara. A whirlwind romance. I must say, I was surprised. Beau usually prefers the company of his horses to women. "Love strikes when you least expect it, Uncle," Beau said, taking a sip of wine. His hand was steady, but Clara noticed the vein throbbing in his neck. "Indeed," Thaddeus smirked. "And you, my dear Clara. Tell me, what is it about my nephew that captured your heart? Was it his charming personality? Or perhaps the size of his acreage?" Clara set her fork down. She knew this game. She'd played it with debt collectors and liars her whole life. She reached out and placed her hand over Beau's fist, which was clenched on the table. His skin was hot. "He listens," Clara lied smoothly, "and he protects what's his. In a world full of men who only want to take, your nephew gave me a reason to stay." Beau looked at her, genuinely surprised. For a moment, the act felt real. Thaddeus's eyes narrowed. He wasn't buying it completely, but he couldn't prove otherwise. "Touching. Well, you know the law, Beau. The marriage must be consummated to be valid in the eyes of the church and the state, should anyone, like me, decide to contest the will." Beau stiffened. "That is none of your concern." "Oh, but it is." Thaddeus smiled, a snake baring its fangs. "I'll be staying in the guest cottage for a few days, just to observe, to make sure the union is legitimate." Later that night, the storm broke. Rain lashed against the windows of the Sterling mansion. Clara was in her room, brushing her hair, when the door flew open. Beau stood there, drenched from the rain, his chest heaving. He looked wild, dangerous. "He knows," Beau rasped, slamming the door and locking it. "He knows we're faking it. He has men watching the windows." Clara stood up, clutching her robe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Beau walked toward her, the smell of rain and whiskey rolling off him, "that tonight we have to put on a show. We have to make him believe it." "You said the condition was no intimacy." Clara backed away until she hit the cold glass of the window. Beau stopped inches from her. He placed a hand on the window pane next to her head, trapping her. He was so close, she could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "I know what I said," Beau whispered, his voice rough. "But if we don't convince him, I lose the ranch. And you lose your life. Thaddeus doesn't leave loose ends." "So what do we do?" Clara breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Beau looked down at her lips. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "We make shadows," he said. "We make noise. And we pray to God we don't forget it's a lie." He reached out and extinguished the oil lamp, plunging the room into darkness. The darkness of the room magnified every sound. The rain lashing against the window sounded like bullets. Inside, the air was heavy with a suffocating heat. Bo stood by the bed, his breathing ragged. He kicked his heavy boots against the floorboards, creating a rhythmic thud that would echo for anyone listening in the hallway. Then, he gripped the heavy oak bedpost and shook it. The frame groaned, a sound that could easily be mistaken for passion. "Say something," Bo whispered harshly, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Thaddeus is right outside the door. I can see his shadow under the jamb." Clara sat in the middle of the mattress, her knees drawn to her chest, trembling. It wasn't from cold. It was from the sheer, overwhelming proximity of the man. "What do you want me to say?" she hissed back. "Anything. Just make it sound real." Clara closed her eyes. She thought of the debt, the poverty, the way Silas Vane had looked at her. She needed this money. She needed to survive. She let out a soft, breathless moan, then pitched her voice higher. "Bo, please." Bo froze. The sound of his name on her lips, spoken like that, seemed to strike him physically. He looked at her in the dark, his silhouette rigid. He grabbed the pitcher of water from the nightstand and splashed some onto his face and neck, simulating sweat. Then he sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight, sliding Clara toward him. "Louder," he commanded, though his voice lacked its usual bite. Clara let out a cry, half acting, half fear. Bo slammed his hand against the headboard with a violent crack. "That's it," he muttered, more to himself than her. "That's enough." They sat in silence for a long time as the storm raged outside. Bo didn't move from the edge of the bed. He sat with his back to her, head in his hands. "You can sleep on the bed," he said finally, his voice gruff. "I'll take the floor." "You'll freeze," Clara said. "I've slept in snowdrifts colder than this rug, Clara. Go to sleep." He lay down on the Persian rug, using his duster coat as a blanket. Clara lay awake for hours, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, wondering how a man could be so terrifying and yet so fiercely protective. The next morning, the sun broke over the Wyoming plains, bathing the ranch in deceptive gold. When they went downstairs, Judge Thaddeus Sterling was waiting in the dining room, sipping black coffee. He looked at them, Bo with his disheveled hair, and Clara with dark circles under her eyes. A slow, oily smile spread across the judge's face. "Well," Thaddeus said, setting his cup down, "I trust you slept well?" "Like the dead," Bo said sharply, pulling out a chair for Clara. Thaddeus chuckled. "Good. I'm satisfied, nephew, for now. I'll be heading back to town. But I'm leaving a gift. I've hired a new foreman for you. Since you'll be busy with your new bride, you'll need help running the herds." The front door opened, and a man walked in. He was short but wide, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and a toothpick rolling between his teeth. He wore a gun belt that hung too low, the mark of a gunslinger, not a rancher. "Name's Caleb Thorne," the man grunted. Bo stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "I didn't ask for a foreman. My men answer to me." "They answer to the Sterling estate," Thaddeus corrected coldly. "And until you produce an heir, the estate is under my supervision. Caleb stays. He'll make sure everything runs smoothly." Thaddeus stood, tapped his cane on the floor, and left. Caleb Thorne tipped his hat to Clara, a gesture that felt more like a threat than a greeting, and followed the judge out. "He's a spy," Clara said the moment the door closed. He's worse than a spy, Bo said, his eyes dark. Thorne is a cleaner. Thaddeus uses him when he wants problems to disappear. Bo turned to her, grabbing her shoulders. Listen to me. You do not go near Thorne. You do not ride alone. You stay in the house. I'm not a prisoner, Bo. You are if you want to live, he roared. Then lowering his voice, he added, Please, just do as I say. For 3 days, Clara obeyed. She cleaned the already clean house, read books in the library, and watched Bo from the window as he worked the horses. He was magnificent on a horse, part man, part centaur, moving with a grace that belied his size. But on the 4th day, boredom and defiance won out. She saw Martha struggling to carry a basket of laundry to the creek. Clara ran out to help. I got it, Martha, Clara insisted. Mr. Bo won't like you being out here, ma'am, Martha warned. Mr. Bo isn't my jailer, Clara said. After helping Martha, Clara wandered toward the stables. The smell of hay and leather was intoxicating. She found a mare, a spirited chestnut named Ladybird. Without thinking, Clara saddled her. She had grown up on a poor farm. She could ride bareback if she had to. She rode out toward the North Ridge, the wind whipping her hair. For the first time in days, she felt free. The ranch was beautiful, rolling hills of sage and grass, the mountains standing sentinel in the distance. She didn't see the glint of sunlight on metal in the rocks above. Crack. The sound of the rifle shot echoed across the canyon a split second before the bullet kicked up dirt just inches from Ladybird's hooves. The horse reared, screaming. Clara lost her stirrups and was thrown backward, hitting the hard earth with a bone-jarring thud. The world spun. She heard another shot. Zing. This one tore through the hem of her skirt. Stay down, a voice roared. Bo was there. He must have been following her. He came galloping over the ridge on his black stallion, firing his Colt Peacemaker blindly toward the rocks to provide cover. He didn't stop the horse. He swung down from the saddle while it was still moving, scooping Clara up by the waist and dragging her behind a large boulder. He pressed her into the dirt, his heavy body covering hers. Are you hit? He demanded, his face inches from hers, pale with panic. Clara, are you hit? I don't think so, she gasped, winded. Bo checked her quickly, his hands patting down her arms and sides. When he found no blood, his relief instantly turned to fury. He grabbed her face with rough hands. I told you, he shouted, his voice shaking. I told you not to leave the house. Do you think this is a game? That was a Sharp's rifle. Whoever fired that wasn't trying to scare you. They were trying to put a hole in you. Clara looked at the rocks where the shot had come from. Was it Thorne? Thorne, or one of his dogs. Bo spat. He reloaded his revolver with trembling fingers. Thaddeus is escalating. He doesn't just want to check if we're married. He wants you gone, so the contract is void. They waited behind the rock for an hour until the sun began to dip. The shooter was gone. Bo whistled for his horse. He mounted, then pulled Clara up to sit in front of him. He held her tight against his chest the whole ride back. His heart was beating against her back like a war drum. For the first time, Clara didn't feel like a business partner. She felt like something precious he was terrified of losing. The ride back to the ranch was silent, but the air between them had shifted. The dynamic of master and nuisance was gone, replaced by shared survival. When they got back to the main house, Bo didn't yell. He simply marched her into the kitchen, sat her down, and poured her a glass of whiskey. Drink, he ordered. It'll steady the nerves. Clara coughed as the amber liquid burned her throat. You saved my life. I protected my investment, Bo said, turning away to look out the window, scanning the darkness. But the lie was weak, and they both knew it. You don't throw yourself in front of bullets for an investment, Bo, Clara said softly. He didn't answer. He just tightened his grip on his gun belt. I'm going to check the perimeter. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Not even Martha. Bo disappeared into the night, leaving Clara alone in the fortress. But fear has a way of turning into curiosity. Clara couldn't sit still. She wandered the hallways, the adrenaline from the shooting still coursing through her veins. She found herself standing in front of the heavy oak door at the end of the West Wing hallway. The door Bo had strictly forbidden her from touching. The condition. She knew she shouldn't. Breaking the rules meant losing the money. But someone had just tried to kill her, and she had a feeling the reason why lay behind this door. She tried the handle. Locked. Clara remembered the hairpins in her messy bun. Her father had been a gambler and a drifter. He had taught her how to pick a simple lock when she was 12. Mostly so they could break into their own house when he lost the keys. It took her 2 minutes. With a soft click, the tumbler turned. Clara pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, smelling of dust and dried roses. She lit a match and found an oil lamp on a desk. It wasn't a dungeon. It was a woman's study. There were paintings of flowers on the walls, a sewing machine in the corner, and shelves lined with poetry books. This was Evelyn's room, the dead fiancé. Clara walked to the desk. It was covered in a layer of dust, undisturbed for 2 years. In the center sat a leather-bound journal. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. The last entry was dated 2 days before Evelyn's death. October 14th, 1885. I told Bo I was pregnant. He was so happy. I've never seen him smile like that. But Thaddeus found out. I saw him arguing with Bo in the barn. Thaddeus said a child would complicate the merger with the railroad. He looked at me today with those dead shark eyes. I'm scared. I'm going to take the mare out tomorrow just to get away from the house. I need to think. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. Evelyn hadn't just died in a riding accident. She was pregnant with Bo's child, and Thaddeus knew. What are you doing? The voice was low and deadly. Clara spun around. Bo was standing in the doorway. He looked soaking wet from the night dew, and his face was a mask of absolute betrayal. Bo, Clara stammered, holding the journal against her chest. I gave you one rule, Bo said, walking into the room. He didn't look at the journal. He looked at her. One condition, stay out of my past. She was pregnant, Clara blurted out. Bo froze. The anger in his eyes shattered, replaced by a grief so raw it made Clara's heart ache. He stopped walking. What? He whispered. The journal, Clara said, stepping forward and holding it out. Read it. She told you she was pregnant. She was scared of Thaddeus. Bo, it wasn't an accident. Thaddeus killed her. He killed her. And your unborn child. Bo took the book with trembling hands. He read the page, his eyes scanning the frantic handwriting of the woman he had loved. His face turned a terrifying shade of pale, then red. A vein in his temple pulsed. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He closed the book gently and set it on the desk. When he looked up, the gray eyes were gone, replaced by black pits of vengeance. He knew, Bo said, his voice sounding like grinding stones. I blame myself. For 2 years, I thought she fell because I didn't cinch the saddle tight enough. I thought I killed them. It wasn't you, Clara said, reaching out to touch his arm. This time, He didn't pull away. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the strength in her jaw and the fire in her eyes. "You need to leave," Bo said suddenly. Clara blinked. "What?" "Pack your things. I'm putting you on the midnight train to Denver. Take the cash from the safe." "I'm not leaving," Clara said firmly. "Did you not hear me?" Bo shouted, the calm facade cracking. "He killed Evelyn. He killed my child. And today he tried to kill you. I will not bury another woman. He stopped. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. "Another woman, you what, Bo?" Clara stepped closer. Bo looked down at her. The distance between them vanished. The fake marriage, the contract, the money, it all dissolved. There was only the man, the woman, and the danger closing in. "I can't protect you here," he rasped. "I don't need you to protect me," Clara said. "I need you to fight with me. We have the proof now. We can take this to the U.S. Marshal. But if I leave, he wins. He gets the ranch. He wins." Bo stared at her, his chest heaving. He reached out, his rough hand cupping her cheek. His thumb traced her lower lip. "You are a foolish, stubborn woman," he whispered. "And you're a rich cowboy with a lot of baggage," she countered breathlessly. He leaned in. His lips brushed hers, hesitant at first, testing the waters he had sworn never to enter. But when Clara didn't pull away, when she leaned into him, the dam broke. Bo kissed her. It wasn't the dry kiss from the wedding, and it wasn't the fake moans from the bedroom. It was hungry, desperate, and filled with 2 years of loneliness. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her waist like bands of steel. Clara buried her hands in his wet hair, pulling him closer. The condition was broken. But as they kissed in the dusty room of a dead woman, a sound cut through the night air. A whistle, sharp and loud. Then, the smell of smoke. Bo broke the kiss, lifting his head. He sniffed the air. Smoke. He ran to the window. Damn it! The barn was on fire. The flames were already licking up the sides of the wooden structure, illuminating the night sky in orange and red. The horses were inside. "Stay here," Bo yelled, running for the door. "No." Clara grabbed the water pitcher, dumping it on her hem to keep the fire from catching her dress. "We're partners, remember?" They ran out into the courtyard. The heat was intense. The barn was a towering inferno. Caleb Thorne was standing by the corral gate, watching the fire with a cigarette in his mouth. He held a torch in one hand. He saw Bo and Clara and smiled. "Tragic accident," Thorne called out over the roar of the flames. "Just like the last one." Bo didn't hesitate. He didn't go for the water buckets. He drew his peacemaker. But before he could aim, 3 men stepped out from the shadows of the bunkhouse, rifles leveled at Bo. "Drop it, Sterling," Thorne yelled, "or the girl dies first." Bo froze, the gun heavy in his hand. He looked at Clara, then at the men. He slowly lowered the hammer and dropped the gun into the dust. "Smart man," Thorne sneered. "Tie them up, throw them in the barn, let them have their honeymoon in the heat." The heat hit them before the doors even closed. It wasn't just hot, it was a physical weight, pressing against their skin, sucking the moisture from their eyes. Thorne and his men slammed the massive double doors of the barn shut. The heavy wooden bar dropped into place on the outside with a sickening thud. "Burn!" Thorne's voice, muffled by the thick wood, laughed. "Burn, you rats!" Inside, the world was turning orange. The dry hay in the loft had caught first, sending a rain of sparks drifting down like hellish snow. The air was already thick with black smoke, tasting of tar and burning horsehair. The horses were screaming, a high, piercing sound that cut right through Clara's soul. There were 6 of them in the stalls, kicking violently against the wood, their eyes rolling in terror. "The back door!" Clara yelled, coughing into her sleeve. "Barred from the outside!" Bo shouted back. He ran to the main doors, throwing his shoulder against them. He gritted his teeth and shoved with the strength of a desperate man, but the bar held fast. He spun around, his eyes wild, scanning the burning tomb. "We can't break it," Bo roared. "The wood is 3 inches of oak." Clara looked around. The fire was climbing the walls. A burning beam fell from the ceiling, crashing onto the dirt floor just feet from them, scattering embers onto Clara's skirt. She frantically batted them away. "Bo, the horses!" Clara pointed. "We can't leave them." Bo looked at the stallion. Midnight, his prize horse. The animal was rearing in its stall, hooves splintering the gate. "We can't save them," Bo said, his voice cracking with agony. "We have to find a way out for us." "No!" Clara grabbed his lapels, shaking him. The smoke was getting lower, forcing them to crouch. "Think, Bo. You're the rancher. Use them. We can't break the door, but he can." She pointed at Midnight. The stallion weighed nearly 1,200 pounds of muscle and panic. Bo stared at her, the realization dawning in his soot-stained face. He nodded once. "Cover your face." Bo grabbed a saddle blanket, soaking it in the horse trough which was already covered in a layer of ash. He ran to Midnight's stall. The horse snapped at him, terrified. But Bo didn't flinch. He grabbed the halter, pulling the horse's head down, speaking low and fast into its ear. "Easy, boy. Easy. We're going for a run." Bo threw the wet blanket over Midnight's head to blind him from the fire. He didn't bother with a saddle. He vaulted onto the horse's back, gripping the mane. "Clara, get up behind me." Clara scrambled onto the horse's back, wrapping her arms around Bo's waist so tight her fingers dug into his ribs. "Hold on," Bo yelled, "and don't let go, no matter what." Bo guided the blinded horse toward the back of the barn, not toward the doors, but toward the feed chute. It was a narrower exit, boarded up with older, rotting pine. It was their only chance. He backed the horse up as far as he could, the flames now licking at their heels. The heat was blistering. Clara could feel the skin on her back tightening. "Hee-yah!" Bo screamed, kicking his heels into the stallion's flanks. Midnight exploded forward. The horse, fueled by terror and blindly trusting his rider, launched himself at the wooden wall. Crash. The impact was like a cannonball. The rotten wood of the feed chute shattered. Splinters flew like shrapnel. The horse stumbled, nearly throwing them, but the momentum carried them through. They burst out into the cool night air, tumbling onto the grass. Midnight bucked, ripping the blanket off his head and galloping into the darkness. Bo and Clara hit the ground hard, rolling down a small embankment. "They're out!" a voice shouted from the front of the barn. It was one of the mercenaries. They had heard the crash. "Kill them!" Thorne's voice roared. Bang! A bullet whizzed past Clara's ear, burying itself in the dirt. "Run!" Bo grabbed Clara's hand, hauling her up. They didn't look back at the burning barn or the other horses trapped inside. They sprinted toward the tree line of the Sterling Woods. Behind them, more shots rang out, but the smoke from the fire was billowing across the yard, creating a thick gray fog that shielded them. They ran until their lungs burned. They ran through brambles that tore at Clara's dress and whipped Bo's face. They ran, until the ground began to slope upward, the rocky terrain of the foothills replacing the ranch grass. Only when they reached the shelter of a limestone overhang, a mile up the mountain, did they collapse. Clara fell against the cold rock, gasping for air. Her lungs wheezed. She looked at Bo. He was slumped against the wall, wiping soot from his eyes. His duster was singed, and there was a bloody gash on his forehead from the fall. He looked down at the ranch below. It was a bonfire in the distance. The barn was gone. "My horses," Bo whispered. He sounded broken. Clara crawled over to him. She didn't say anything. She just took his hand. His fingers were shaking violently, the adrenaline crash. "We're alive," Clara said softly. Bo squeezed her hand, then looked at her with an intensity that scared her. "For now. But we have nothing. No horses, no guns, no food, and it's going to freeze tonight." Clara reached into the bodice of her ruined dress. She pulled out a small rectangular object. "We have this," she said. It was Evelyn's journal. Bo stared at the book. He reached out and touched it as if it were a holy relic. "You kept it." "I told you," Clara said, her voice trembling but fierce. "I'm not leaving until we win." Bo let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled her into him, wrapping his coat around both of them. "You're a crazy woman, Clara O'Malley. And you're a husband with a debt to pay," she whispered against his chest. They huddled together under the rock shelf as the temperature plummeted. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying the faint scent of smoke. They were fugitives in their own land, stripped of wealth and power, left with nothing but the truth and each other. Morning brought no warmth, only a gray steel sky that promised snow. Clara woke up stiff and aching. Her expensive wedding dress was now a rag of gray silk and mud. Beside her, Bo was already awake. He was standing at the edge of the overhang, looking down into the valley. "They're tracking us," Bo said without turning around. Clara joined him. Far below, tiny figures on horseback were moving systematically through the tree line. "Thorn and a tracker," Bo noted, pointing to a rider who was dismounted, examining the ground. "That's Silas Vane." Clara's blood ran cold. "Vane? The loan shark?" "Thaddeus must have hired him. Vane knows the low country better than anyone, and he hates you." "Why does he hate me?" "Because you escaped him," Bo said grimly. "Men like Vane don't like it when their property walks away." They had to move. Bo knew the terrain. The Sterling Ridge backed up into the Blackwood Range. Dangerous, jagged peaks filled with old silver mines and drop-offs. "We need a weapon," Bo said as they hiked up a steep deer trail. "And we need to get to the town of Silverton. The marshal there is a federal appointee, not on Thaddeus's payroll, but it's a 2-day hike over the pass." "I can make it," Clara said, though her shoes were thin leather, meant for parlors, not mountains. By midday, the hunger set in. They chewed on pine needles for the vitamin C and drank from an icy stream. As they crossed a ridge, a shot rang out. It wasn't close, but the echo was unmistakable. "They're closing the gap," Bo cursed. "They have fresh horses. We're slowing down." He looked at Clara's feet. Her shoes had disintegrated. Her feet were bleeding, wrapping in strips of her petticoat. She hadn't complained once. "Clara," Bo stopped. "I'm going to draw them off. You take the journal. Head for the pass." "No," Clara said immediately. "This isn't a negotiation," Bo snapped, his eyes flashing with fear. "If they catch us both, we die. If I make a stand, you can get the evidence to the marshal. If you make a stand with no gun, You're just committing suicide, Clara argued. We stick together. That was the deal. The deal was business, Bo shouted. This is what? Clara challenged him, stepping closer. Tell me, Bo, what is this? Bo looked at her, his defenses crumbling. This is me not being able to watch you die. Clara softened. She reached up, wiping a smudge of dirt from his cheek. Then don't let me die. But don't send me away. Bo closed his eyes, defeated by her stubbornness. Fine, but we need an ambush. We can't outrun horses. They found their spot in Dead Man's Gorge. It was a narrow slit in the rocks where the path was only wide enough for single-file riding. Bo worked quickly. He found a heavy, dead log perched precariously on the ledge above the trail. He used a sturdy branch as a lever. It's a trap, Bo explained. Old Apache trick. When they ride under, I push the log. It won't kill them all, but it will cause chaos. In the confusion, I need to get one of their guns. And what do? Clara asked. You be the bait. 10 minutes later, the riders appeared. Silas Vane was in the lead, looking like a vulture in his long coat. Thorn was behind him, along with 2 other hired guns. Clara stood in the middle of the trail, 40 feet ahead of them. She looked small and terrified. Well, well, Vane called out, pulling his horse to a halt. Look what we have here, the runaway bride. Where's the husband? Thorn asked, drawing his pistol. He scanned the rocks. He left me, Clara sobbed, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. It was the performance of her life. He ran off as soon as he heard the horses. He took the journal. He left me here to die. Vane laughed, a cruel, grating sound. Typical. Rich boys don't have the stomach for the cold. Don't you worry, darling. You still owe me that debt. Vane spurred his horse forward. Thorn followed. They moved right under the ledge. Now, Clara screamed, dropping to the ground. Above them, Bo heaved with all his might. The massive log groaned, tipped, and crashed down. It didn't hit Vane, but it slammed into the trail right between the horses. Vane's horse reared violently, throwing him into the dirt. The other horses panicked, bucking and colliding. Bo leaped from the ledge. He didn't land gracefully, but he landed with purpose. He tackled Thorn off his horse, the 2 men hitting the ground in a tangle of fists and dust. Thorn was strong, but Bo was fighting with the rage of a man who had lost everything. Bo took a punch to the jaw that made his vision swim, but he countered with a savage headbutt. Thorn's nose crunched. Bo reached for Thorn's gun. Thorn bit Bo's wrist, snarling like a dog. Bang! The gun went off in the struggle. Thorn went limp, a look of surprise on his face. Bo scrambled up, grabbing the Colt revolver. He spun around. Silas Vane was on his knees, reaching for a sawed-off shotgun he had dropped. Don't! Bo commanded, leveling the pistol at Vane's head. Vane froze. He looked at the dead body of Thorn, then at the barrel of the Peacemaker. You don't have the guts, Sterling, Vane sneered. You're a businessman. I resigned, Bo said coldly. Bo, look out, Clara screamed. The 3rd mercenary, who had been thrown further back, was aiming his rifle. Clara didn't think. She grabbed a fist-sized rock and hurled it. It was a desperate throw, but it hit the mercenary's horse on the rump. The horse kicked out, knocking the man's aim off. The rifle shot went wide, pinging off the canyon wall. Bo fired. He didn't miss. The mercenary fell. Now it was just Bo, Clara, and Silas Vane. Bo walked over to Vane and kicked the shotgun away. He grabbed Vane by the collar and hauled him up. Tell me, Bo growled, What is Thaddeus planning? Vane, bleeding from a cut on his head, smiled through red teeth. Planning? It's already done, boy. He sent a telegram to the state capitol this morning. He reported that you murdered your wife in a drunken rage and burned down the barn to hide the body. There's a $5,000 bounty on your head, dead or alive. Bo went still. He framed me. He framed you good, Vane laughed. You can't go to the marshal. You can't go to town. Every bounty hunter from here to Texas is going to be looking for you. You're a ghost, Sterling. Bo looked at Clara. She was standing there shivering, her dress torn, but her eyes steady. Tie him up, Bo said. You're letting him live? Clara asked. Killing him is too easy, Bo said. He pistol-whipped Vane, knocking him unconscious. We're going to need a witness. They took Vane's horse and his supplies, dried beef, a canteen, and a heavy wool blanket. They left Vane tied to a tree, alive but stranded. As they rode double on the stolen horse further into the mountains, the reality of Vane's words settled in. We can't go to Silverton, Bo said over the wind. If there's a bounty, the marshal might shoot first and ask questions later. So where do we go? Clara asked, leaning her head against his back. Bo steered the horse toward a hidden trail that led back down toward the valley, not away from it. We go back, Bo said darkly. Back to the ranch? Tomorrow is my birthday, Bo said. The deadline for the will. Thaddeus is hosting a memorial ball at the ranch house. He's going to announce his takeover of the estate to all the wealthy investors in the territory. He's throwing a party on your grave, Clara realized. Exactly, Bo said. All the powerful men in Wyoming will be in that room. Judges, senators, bankers. If we want to clear my name, we can't do it in a court. We have to do it in front of an audience. We're going to crash the party, Clara said, a small smile touching her lips. We're not just going to crash it, Bo said, checking the ammunition in the stolen revolver. We're going to burn it down. The Sterling mansion glowed like a lantern against the dark prairie night. Inside, chandeliers dripped with crystal and champagne flowed freely. Judge Thaddeus Sterling stood at the head of the ballroom, a mourner's mask plastered over a triumphant smile. Ladies and gentlemen, Thaddeus's voice boomed, tonight was meant to be a birthday celebration. Instead, we mourn. My nephew, Bo Sterling, a man troubled by demons, has taken his own life, and that of his new bride, in a fire of his own making. Gasps rippled through the room. As the sole heir, Thaddeus continued, I must now take on the burden of the ranch. Is that what you call it, Uncle? A burden? The voice cut through the room like a knife. The crowd parted. Standing in the archway were Bo and Clara. They looked like they had crawled out of a grave, covered in soot, clothes shredded, but standing tall. Thaddeus dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble. I'm no ghost, Bo said, stepping into the room, his spurs clanking ominously on the polished floor. And I'm not dead, though you certainly tried your best. Seize them, Thaddeus shrieked, pointing a shaking finger. He's a murderer. He killed his wife. I am the wife, Clara announced, stepping forward. She reached into her tattered dress and pulled out the leather-bound book. And I'm very much alive. She held the journal high. This is Evelyn's diary, October 14th, 1885. Thaddeus found out I am pregnant. He said a child would ruin the merger. I'm scared he's going to hurt me. Clara's voice rang out clearly. Evelyn wasn't an accident. She was murdered. Just like Thaddeus tried to burn us alive last night to stop Bo from claiming his inheritance. The governor of Wyoming stepped forward, his eyes narrowing at Thaddeus. Is this true? Thaddeus looked at the disgusted faces of his investors. His empire was crumbling. The mask fell away, replaced by a snarl of pure malice. It was my ranch, Thaddeus screamed. I built the deals. I wasn't going to let some love-struck boy and his whore ruin it all. He reached into his tuxedo and pulled a hidden Derringer pistol. He didn't aim at Bo. He aimed at Clara. If I can't have it, no one can. Bo didn't think. He moved. As Thaddeus pulled the trigger, Bo threw himself in front of Clara. Bang! The bullet struck Bo's shoulder, spinning him around. The crowd screamed, but Bo didn't fall. He absorbed the pain, drew his Colt Peacemaker with lightning speed, and fired. Boom! The bullet shattered Thaddeus's hand. The Derringer clattered away as the judge fell to his knees, howling in pain. Bo stood over him, blood blossoming on his shirt, hammer cocked for a kill shot. Bo, don't, Clara whispered, placing a hand on his arm. If you kill him, you become him. Let him rot in a cell. That is the better revenge. Bo stared at the man who had taken everything from him. Slowly, he lowered the gun. Marshal, take him. As the lawman dragged the wailing judge away, Bo's legs gave out. Clara caught him, holding him tight as the room swirled around them. We won, Cowboy, she cried. We won. 6 weeks later, spring had come to Sterling Ridge. The burnt barn was being rebuilt, and the air smelled of wildflowers. Clara stood on the porch, a suitcase at her feet. Inside was $5,000 in gold certificates. The door opened. Bo stepped out, his arm still in a sling. He looked at the suitcase, then at her. The contract is up, Clara said, avoiding his gaze. Thaddeus is gone. The ranch is yours. I fulfilled the terms. Bo walked over and kicked the suitcase over. The money spilled across the porch. I don't care about the money, Bo said, and I don't care about the contract. We had a deal, Clara insisted, her voice trembling. I pretend to be your wife. I leave. You're a terrible liar, Clara, Bo said softly, pulling her close with his good arm. You stopped pretending the night you dragged me out of that fire. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, a rough, unpolished diamond he had mined himself. I don't want a fake wife, Bo said, his voice thick with emotion. I want the woman who fights bears and saves my life. Clara O'Malley, will you marry me? For real this time? No conditions. Clara looked at the spilled money, her ticket to freedom. Then she looked at the man who made her feel like she was home. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're going to be a handful to manage, Bo Sterling. I count on it, he grinned. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Bo kissed her, a promise sealed not in ink, but in love. Far above on the ridge, the spirit of the West watched them. A land tamed not by guns, but by a cowboy, and the woman who refused to just pretend. And that is the story of Bo and Clara. They started with a cold business deal, a marriage of convenience built on desperation and greed. But in the face of fire, bullets, and betrayal, they found something money can't buy: trust. Bo thought he could buy a wife to save his legacy, but he ended up finding a partner who saved his soul. It just goes to show that sometimes the hardest walls to break down aren't made of stone. They're made of heartbreak. And once they crumble, what's left is stronger than steel. If you enjoyed this Wild West romance and want more stories about grit, passion, and survival, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What did you think of Clara's decision to stay? Would you have taken the $5,000 and run? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. We upload brand new dramas every week. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay wild.